The next thing we're going to investigate is drawing graphs to make them either even or odd, and then investigating their tables and kind of seeing what patterns we see. So it says, consider the partial graph of the function f of x shown twice below. Sketch the other half of the function if a, f of x is even, and or b, f of x is odd, as we see labeled down here. So we're going to draw both of these. We're going to finish the table below each function by filling in the 2 new points you plotted. Now, this is just to make sure we're clear. Technically, we're graphing an infinite number of points because anything that we graph along those line segments is a point, but we're going to list the 2 points related to the points that were already graphed. So first off, for the even function, we want to reflect over the y-axis to make it the same on the other side of the y-axis. 0, 0 is going to stay the same. This point here, which corresponds to 3, 5, is going to flip over the y-axis, and it's going to become negative 3, 5. So that's one of the ones I want to write in my table. Looking at the other point here, it is positive 7, negative 2. So I'm going to just switch colors, and we'll kind of do that point. So that's down here. So that's going to become negative 7, negative 2 when I reflect over the y-axis. So here's the rest of that graph. So the whole graph together, we can now see is symmetric over the y-axis and therefore even. So I'm just going to fill in that last point on the table. When I look, I see that that is the point negative 7, negative 2. So before we move over to the odd function, we kind of want to look and see what we see in our table. And specifically, what I should notice is that even though the x's are negative here, the y's stay the same. So these y values are the same, those y values are the same. I'm going to write same. 0, 0 doesn't have a pair because it's directly on the y-axis. It could be 0, 2 or 0, negative 5, but the point on the y-axis will not reflect. Looking over at the odd function, here we want to rotate the points or 180 about the origin, or we could think flip over the x and y axis, both of them. So this point 3, 5, it's up here, I want to keep the same color, would go to negative 3, negative 5. So down here. And then this point 7, negative 2 would go to negative 7, positive 2. Come on. Okay, so we can see that graph, if we rotated it 180 about the origin, would be symmetric. So that's our odd function. Filling in those points, the red one we said was negative 3, negative 5, and the blue one we said was negative 7, positive 2. So when I look at this table, I should notice that the x's went negative, were negated, right? And the y's were also negated. So 5, negative 5, negative 2. So this one we see the x's are negative, but the y's are the same. And I'm actually going to move that word over a little bit just so we can see it. I'm going to write it sideways because I know there's not a lot of space between the two. So the y's are the same. Here we see both negative x and negative y. So both of those were negated when we finished that graph. Now we're going to use that so we can look at tables and decide our functions even or odd based on the points we can see. So the first one is negative x plus 5. When I'm wanting to check to see if it's an even or odd function, which is what we're doing here, I want to check at 1 and negative 1. Here, I don't even have the same numbers, so I have 4 and 6. So it's not even like, are things negative or positive? They're completely different numbers, and the same deal with these two. So this one is neither. And if we think about it, this is a straight line going through 5 on the y-axis, slope down 1 over 1, negative 1 slope, so we can see that doesn't really have any sort of symmetry that we're looking for. On the next one, we have negative 1 plus 5x squared, and we are going to check those values. Now, I'm also kind of checking the x values, but I know those are negating, right? So we're seeing that this is always, the x's are being negated. What's happening with the y's? And when I look, they are the same. So we have that symmetry over the y-axis. So this one is even. And lastly, we'll look at this one, negative x to the 7th plus 5x cubed, and we will check those pairs. Right, we see the x's obviously are negated, but we also see that the y's are negated as well. So if both of them are switching, that's that reflection over the x and y axis, which is our rotation of 180. So this is an odd function. And if we graphed those on our calculator, if we actually typed in these equations, even more so, because we'd be seeing more points and more values on the graph, we would be pretty sure that these are true of these graphs.